Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Antonia Barra. Antonia Barra was born in the late 1980s into a warm and united family. Her family lived in a spacious home that comfortably accommodated. Her parents, Alejandro and Marcela, nurtured their 5 children, 4 daughters and 1 son, creating a warm environment filled with care and attention. The children were generally kind and well-behaved, rarely causing trouble. However, Antonia distinguished herself from her siblings with her exceptional perceptiveness, sense of responsibility, and ambition from an early age, making her a special source of pride for her parents. Antonia was a top student who had a good relationship with her teachers and clear future goals. She dreamed of traveling and leading a fulfilling life. After graduating high school, she was accepted into her preferred university and began studying a popular major. As a freshman, she focused on mastering the fundamentals of her future career, while also engaging in social and academic events, where she made new friends who shared her interests and ambitions. One of her closest friends was Consuela Uribe, a law student. They enjoyed spending time together, going out, shopping, and attending parties. This brings them even close. Martin was born and raised in Tomoko, Chile, the same city as Antonia. He comes from a large family, including parents, a sister, and a brother. When he was young, he had a child with a woman named Daniela Alvarez, but their relationship ended shortly right after they give birth. From 2015 to 2017, Antonia and Martin communicated through a social network. At that time, Antonia was a teenager. They exchanged messages and commented on each other's photos, but their interactions were limited to online communication. Eventually, they met in person, which sadly resulted in a tragic outcome. When Antonia broke up with her boyfriend Rodrigo, Consuela suggested that she find a way to distract herself from the sadness. Struggling with the breakup, Antonia decided to take her friend's advice to help clear her mind and forget her troubles for a while. They planned a trip to celebrate Chile's Independence Day on September 18th, choosing the tourist town of Pucón as their destination. By chance, Antonia encountered Martin there. He was in Pucón to attend an electronic music festival at a local club called Black Room, where a DJ friend of his was performing. On September 17th, around 6:30 p.m., Consuela, Antonia, and 3 friends, including Consuela's boyfriend, headed to Pucón. The trip went well, and upon arrival, they stayed in different accommodations. The girls stayed at a summer house owned by the Consuela family. After 8 p.m., they started getting ready for a party at the popular venue, Black Room, which promised to be an unforgettable experience. Before leaving, Antonia messaged her father, Alejandro, who reminded her to be careful and cautious with strangers. She replied, assuring him that being prudent was her top priority. Antonia and Consuela got ready and went to the club, where they ordered food and drinks. Antonia and Martin had a great time chatting and dancing. The Black Room Club turned out to be the perfect place for their unexpected reunion. They were delighted by this chance meeting and spent the evening together, enjoying each other's company. It was clear they had a mutual affection. Antonia would occasionally join Consuela and greet the male acquaintances she had traveled with, moving between different bars. However, she didn't realize how much she had consumed. The combination of the long drive and an empty stomach contributed to her inebriation, which was unusual for her. Around 6:45 a.m., Consuela found her friend Antonia happily chatting with a mutual acquaintance, Emilio. Consuela suggested it was time to leave, but Antonia insisted on staying, feeling good and wanting to enjoy the night longer. Despite Consuela's advice to stop drinking and rethink her choice, Antonia remained determined to stay at the club while Consuela went home. This decision would later prove to be a mistake for Antonia. Emilio, who was there, became a witness to what happened next and provided details during the investigation and in court. He observed that Martin approached Antonia, started a conversation, and then took her by the hand to lead her toward the exit. Emilio noticed that Antonia was acting strangely. He wasn't sure if Antonia was participating in the conversation or simply confused by the alcohol. However, she didn't seem to mind being taken away, or maybe she didn't even realize it was happening. Emilio believed that Martin had asked her to join him and that she had agreed. However, the external surveillance footage revealed a different version of events. Martin's friends reported that they left the club in 2 cars, but there wasn't enough space for Martin and Antonia in either vehicle, so they decided to walk. As they walked, they encountered a store. Surveillance footage showed that Martin forced Antonia to go inside. She was unsteady and unable to fight back. Martin, who was a bit more sober, managed to exert some control over the situation. They were recorded on camera multiple times throughout the night. During their time together, Martin was overly affectionate and attempted to kiss Antonia, but she did not reciprocate and tried to stay away. Once they arrived at the rented house, the other friends paid little attention to she. Only Barbara, a 19-year-old who had just joined and wasn't drinking, noticed that the couple appeared to be drunk. Later, they went upstairs. Around 9 a.m., Consuela received a voice message from Antonia. At first, she found it difficult to understand the message. After listening closely, she deciphered that Antonia was asking to be picked up. Since Antonia couldn't share her exact location, Consuela used GPS to locate her. Consuela and her boyfriend, Jose, then headed to the specified location. When Consuela and Jose entered the house, they found Martin naked and using a pillow to cover himself. Consuela asked him where Antonia was, but he said he didn't know. They then went upstairs and discovered Antonia in a bedroom, lying on the bed in her underwear and quietly crying. Jose picked her up and took her to the car. Consuela asked what had happened, but Antonia could only cry sob. Consuela and Jose tried to comfort her by hugging her and encouraging her to talk. Once they arrived back at the summer house, Antonia opened up about everything. She revealed that Martin had taken advantage of her against her will, leaving her feeling helpless. Though her memories were blurry, she clearly understood that he had harmed her. This incident had taken place when they went upstairs, and afterward, he left her alone and vanished. After hearing about the incident, Jose and Consuela urged Antonia to report Martin to the police and seek justice. However, she was too afraid that her parents and the public would find out, so she decided to silently cope with her trauma and heal on her own. She asked them not to tell anyone about what happened. Then, Antonia received a message from her father checking in on her and joking about whether she had been drinking too much. To avoid raising suspicion, Consuela responded casually, which unintentionally revealed her true feelings. The next day, Antonia met with Martin to discuss what had happened, but he was dismissive and arrogant, insisting that the previous night's incidents were consensual. At that moment, Antonia understood that she would not receive the truth or an apology from him, and she knew she had to try to get through it. Antonia was suffering from intimacy trauma syndrome, which affects her physical, emotional, cognitive, and social behaviors. This condition can manifest right after a traumatic incident or even months or years later. Antonia was going through an intense phase of this syndrome alone, unable to escape feelings of distress, distraction, anxiety, and confusion, often alternating with hysterical outbursts and crying. Antonia experienced a strong desire to cleanse herself, which caused her nausea and occasional vomiting. For 3 weeks, she kept to herself and tried to behave as if everything was normal. A childhood friend remarked that they hadn't noticed anything unusual about her, but her classmates were aware of her memory loss and disorganization linked to the syndrome. One classmate noted that her grades had fallen, which was unexpected for someone who had always been a dedicated student. When asked about the cause, Antonia said that it to her poor health. Her terrible secret somehow got revealed to an ex-boyfriend, Rodrigo, but the details he received were distorted and negative. He quickly reported this to others. Antonia insisted she was not responsible for what had happened, claiming the information he had was greatly exaggerated, but he did not believe her. To make matters worse, the day before indents, Martin had called her, and it's unclear what they discussed, though it might have included threats from him. On the evening of October 13, 2019, Antonia family could never have imagined how the day would end. Carla, visiting their parents' home, went upstairs to greet her sister Antonia, expecting a simple conversation. However, when she found Antonia seemingly asleep, Carla decided not to disturb her and moved toward the door. Just before leaving, she heard Antonia ask about their mother and request the light to be turned off. After telling Carla she loved her, Antonia turned her face away. Carla thought maybe Antonia just tired or not in the mood. But she didn't know that Antonia was suffering from painful thoughts, making her feel that there was only one way to escape her suffering. By 7 p.m. that evening, Antonia's mother, Marcela, noticed there was no response coming from Antonia's room. When Marcela went in, she was met with a horrifying sight. Her daughter was hanging motionless above the floor. Marcela rushed to Antonia but found no signs of life. Stunned by the tragedy, she called for help from neighbors. Family friends assisted in taking down the body and contacted emergency services. Soon after, Antonia's father, Alejandro, spoke to the media, promising to discover the reasons behind his daughter's tragic choice and to pursue justice. Antonia was known for her lively personality and intelligence, indicating that something significant had deeply affected her. The autopsy later confirmed that she had died from self-strangulation. The situation required urgent action. Without waiting for official investigations, Antonia's parents took matters into their own hands and started their own inquiry. They hired private detectives who carefully reconstructed the last days of Antonia's life and discovered the person responsible for her distress. Alejandro and Marcela quickly reported Martin Pradines to the police, suspecting him of being the culprit. Law enforcement officials interviewed Martin multiple times, but he maintained that he did nothing wrong concerning Antonia. He asserted that their relationship was consensual and he denied any involvement in her tragic death. However, detectives had a different viewpoint and gathered evidence that contradicted his statements. The investigation revealed that Martin left Pucón on September 17 around noon with friends, and they intended to return the following day. Once they arrived at their destination, the group hosted a party at a rented house, filled with conversation, laughter, and, of course, alcohol. A few hours before Antonia passed away, she sent a goodbye message to Rodrigo and shared a childhood video in a family chat. In the video, Antonia was dancing and laughing happily, which highlighted how much she longed for her younger self. She realized she could never go back to her previous life. This tragedy has deeply affected everyone. Thanks to Alejandro, who found the courage to share his daughter's story on a national level, Antonia's tragedy began to resonate with the public. Her name appeared on posters, social media hashtags, and even on building walls. Public support has had a big impact. Within a week, several women came forward with similar allegations against Martin. 6 new charges were filed against him, detailing actions he took from 2010 to 2019. Ultimately, Martin was arrested for these crimes. Meanwhile, his family sought to protect their personal information, which had been leaked online. They claimed that their constitutional right to privacy was violated due to numerous insults, aggressive messages, and false information circulating online. The Martin family suspected the Antonia family of being involved in these leaks. On June 12, 2020, the Temuco court granted the Martin family's request, according to which, the Antonia family is not allowed to share any information about the Martin family on social media and to refrain from making damaging posts. The ruling has angered Chileans who feel it unfairly protected Martin. On July 21st, the Antonia family appealed the decision to the Supreme Court, but their appeal was denied. Later that month, the lawyer for Martin filed a request for protective measures for his client. During the same period, he was formally charged with multiple attacks. Public anger in Chile intensified, leading to the investigation being referred to as the Antonia case. This case has come to represent the fight for justice for victims of violence. Many women, having stayed silent for years, started to share their own experiences. On July 22nd, the court decided to change Martin's preventive measure. He was transferred from detention to house arrest, that is, released from custody. The judge clarified that this decision did not reflect the final punishment. Although the prosecutor charged Martin with 5 counts of misconduct, the court only recognized 2 of them. This decision sparked massive protests across the country, with thousands of people taking to the streets in outrage over the halt of investigations into certain matters and the decision to place Martin under house arrest. In response to public outcry, the authorities filed a request with the appeals court. The judiciary acted quickly, revoking the house arrest and rearresting Martin. Later, the same court removed the statute of limitations for 2 cases of intimate violence. Meanwhile, Alejandro, along with feminist organizations, was working on a bill to establish penalties for such crimes. He stressed that everyone should be concerned when a woman is taken away by a man without resistance, particularly if she is intoxicated. He highlighted the necessity of taking action in these situations, as this vulnerability puts women at risk of becoming victims. The investigation progressed, and in February 2021, Martin's phone was found. Forensic analysis revealed that it contained photos of women's underwear, indicating that he took pride in his actions and kept records of them. The police report was extensive, totaling nearly 400 pages, and included statements from victims, witnesses, and people who knew both Martin and Antonia, including childhood acquaintances. Martin's former teacher described him as a bright and cheerful child, although he showed a strong interest in intimate subjects. Some women recalled that he had touched them when they were young, but at the time, no one considered it significant since they were all children. On June 14, 2022, the criminal court in Temuco began hearings that were expected to last over a month. During this time, the prosecution presented evidence, expert testimonies, and witness statements. Video footage clearly showed that Antonia could not control the situation. On August 26, Martin was sentenced to 20 years in prison for crimes related to intimacy and aggressive behavior. However, on December 29, the Supreme Court accepted the defense's appeal, disagreeing with the original verdict, and a new trial was set for spring 2023. On March 16, the defendant's legal team withdrew from case, and public defense took over his case. On April 24, 2024, his second trial began, addressing 5 cases of violence and 2 cases of sexual assault. During the trial, Martin chose to speak and described what happened. He attributed his actions to the severe effects of alcohol. However, prosecutors argued that his drinking with the women made them vulnerable. On July 7, 2023, he was found guilty. The federal prosecution requested a 41-year prison sentence for Martin Pradenas. On July 28, 2023, the 31-year-old was sentenced to 17 years in prison for 7 offenses related to sexual intimacy involving 6 victims. After accounting for the time he had already spent in custody, he would serve 14 years. The tragic case of Antonia highlighted the danger posed by Martin. It remains unclear how many other innocent women may have been affected by his actions. The line between harassment and flirting is very thin, and one can never anticipate when someone might cross that dangerous boundary.